Welcome to Chapter 5. We are now going to be studying about the Southwest. We are going to do our connection through literature. We're going to read about important people, and then we'll get right along with reading with the lesson. Cowgirl morning. Cassie, Fran shouted, the cows aren't going to milk themselves. Get a move on. My older sister tossed the words over her shoulder as she stamped up our dirt driveway. I watched the school bus pull away. The afternoon sun was bright green in the oak leaves. I settled my hat low on my forehead and started toward the house. Maybe I was lazy, like Fran always said. Ranch life was pretty much composed of endless chores. To the west, Mr. Dolly's semi-tame buffaloes snorted. I kept an eye out for Cypress the bull. Sure enough, he jerked his big head at me and I flinched despite myself. I came back to me every time I saw him, Pa and I on one side of the fence and Cypress banging it with his shaggy head. Fran and I didn't talk much. We mostly glared at each other across the supper table. Papa looked from one of his daughters to the other and shook his head. Finally, Pa said, "You're both excused to finish your chores." I cleared my dishes and slammed the screen door. Fran had already pitched the hay into each manger. The cows munched while I milked them, milk singing into the metal bucket. I only stopped a little while when I emptied each bucketful into the big tin milk can. Frank would skim the cream later. After the chores, I fell into bed. I dropped off quick, dreaming something about a wild white horse. Bang, bang! I jerked awake to Pa pounding on our door. Dally's buffalo broke the fence. We have to get them out of the alfalfa, he shouted. Fran was on her feet in an instant. I heard buffaloes through my sleep haze and scrunched lower under the covers. Both of you, Pa said. We need all hands. Fran pulled the quilt off me, then jerked on her boots and raced out of the room. I pulled on yesterday's jeans, shrugged into a t-shirt, and grabbed my hat as I ran in for the barn. Stars were fading as the sky lightened over the blue mountains. Rowdy, my paint pony, stamped in his stall. The early morning darkness and the scent of buffalo set him on edge. Leading him outside, I saddled him and swung up onto his back. Pa and Fran were on their mares, waiting outside the gate. Following, I leaned out and hooked the gate close behind us. I patted Rowdy's neck. Attaboy. Let's go get those buffs. There was shakiness in my voice, but I squeezed Rowdy into the lope to catch up. Looks like half the herd is here, Pa shouted. Big piece of the north fence is down. We stood a minute on the rise, surveying the 30 or 40 buffaloes spread out into the tall grass. There's Cypress. Watch him, Pa pointed to a huge, dark shape. I'll pick him up and head him back to the field. Some of the cows should follow. Fran, take the right. Cassie, hang back. Move any stragglers up toward Fran, and stay away from Cypress. He didn't need to tell me twice. Rowdy and I crisscrossed the field after stray cows. On the other side of the field, I saw Pa leading Cypress back to his field. Suddenly, I heard Pa's mare whinny sharply. I snapped my head around quick. She was rearing up in high alarm and stepping backward. Pa wasn't in the saddle. Cypress pawed at the dirt, his horns low to the ground. Pa was on the ground with one leg stretched out in front of him. Cypress flared his nostrils, sucking in Pa's scent. I shivered, but there was really no choice. I kicked Rowdy into action as Cypress started to charge. Buffs can move real fast. I leaned forward in the saddle, hoping that we'd be there in enough time to head him off. I shouted and waved my hand frantically. Cypress turned away at the last moment. We dodged in close to Cypress, and I slapped his rump with my hat. Cypress left Pa and pounced after us. My hat flew off as we galloped through the broken fence. We cut to the side just in time. Cypress, with a dozen cows following him, streamed past us into the field. We'd done it. I rode back to Pa. Good work, Cass, he said. His voice shook, and he held his leg with both hands. I swung down next to him. Fran hung at the fence gap, yelling at the last of the cows as they trailed after Cypress. I pulled Paul up. He stood crooked on one leg, leaning hard on my shoulder. I stood about a foot shorter than Pa, but I felt strong and tall with him leaning on me like that. Can you walk back? I asked him. Pa's mouth was clamped tight and his face was whitish. It's twisted bad, but I don't think it's broken, he said through his teeth. I'll make it. We started a slow shamble back to the house. We settled Pa on the couch and I called the doctor. I felt like a day and a half had passed since my feet had hit the cold floorboards. Dr. Moss came around and said Pa's knee was sprained badly, but nothing was broken. Cassie pretty much saved the day, Fran said, and she told Dr. Moss the story. Pa smiled at me and I smiled at the floor. After the doctor left, I walked back through the alfalfa. The grass lay trampled and pawed up. I remember the sharp glint in Cypress's eye when he aimed his horns at my father. I felt a rush of pride and pushed it down. Anybody would have done what Rowdy and I did. Still, I felt taller as I dusted my hat on my jeans and walked back over the rise. Nat Love. Nat Love was a famous African American cowboy in the late 1800s. Born into slavery, he grew up tending horses on a Tennessee plantation and learned to read and write. As a teen, he worked as a cowboy in a large ranch in Kansas. Love worked his way up to become a horse buyer. In Arizona, he was a master range rider and won rodeo contests. Later, he published his autobiography. Georgia O'Keeffe. Georgia O'Keeffe was an important modernist paintist. She knew that she wanted to become an artist. She visited New Mexico and loved the skies and landscape forms. In 1948, she moved there to support her creative interest. Her abstract paintings are famous for showing natural forms of flowers and landscape in simple but detailed close-up. Geronimo. Geronimo was a warrior who led the Apaches to fight government takeover of their land. He was born in 1829 near southeast Arizona. In 1874, the military moved about 4,000 Apaches to a reservation. Under Geronimo's leadership, many fought the military. In the end, Geronimo surrendered and was a prisoner of war for most of his life. He never returned to his homeland, and he died in Oklahoma. Sam Houston. Sam Houston was a lawyer and leader in the Texas fight for independence. As a teen, he lived with the Cherokee in Tennessee, learning their language and customs. Later, he helped them manage their move to an Arkansas reservation. Houston fought for Native American rights when he served in government. He also helped Texas gain statehood in 1845, and the city of Houston is named in his honor. Chapter 5, Lesson 1. How did early peoples cope with the harsh environment of the Southwest? Harsh but beautiful. Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Arizona make up the region known as the Southwest. Many landforms such as desert, mesas, plains, mountains, and plateaus dot the landscape. The climate is mostly dry and hot, but snow and cold can come high in the mountains. From the many early Native American groups to their descendants and other Southwest citizens today, the harsh environment and wondrous landscapes of the region help define daily life. Today, many national parks celebrate the beauty of the Southwest. In Arizona, nearly 5 million people visit Grand Canyon National Park every year. The Grand Canyon is a deep canyon formed by the Colorado River. Visitors can explore the park by hiking the trails, riding mules, or rafting down the river. The Petrified Forest National Park is also in Arizona. Visitors can hike along the Blue Mesa Trail to see wooden logs that were a part of the living trees 200 million years ago. Many dinosaur bones have been found at Big Bend National Park in Texas. Carlsbad Cavern in New Mexico is known for its enormous cave and over 100 surrounding caves. Water activities and waterfalls attract visitors to Chickasaw National Recreation Area in Oklahoma. Desert, plains, and plateau break up the different parts of the Southwest. The Chihuahua Desert is the largest in North America. Most of it lies in Mexico, but it extends north into Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Further west is the Sonoran Desert. That covers southern Arizona, extending into Mexico and California. Turquoise, a mineral used in Native American jewelry, is a resource that comes from the deserts of the Southwest. The Gulf Coast Plain circles the Gulf of Mexico. The eastern part is covered in grasses and wildflower. The western half is mostly short grass and small trees. These grasses are perfect for cattle population. Cotton and rice grow well there. The Great Plains is a flat, grassy area that receives little rain, so it has few trees. It extends from the Midwest and includes parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. The Great Plains is known for agriculture, oil, and natural gas. The Colorado Plateau is a large region that is higher than the surrounding area land and is mostly flat. The plateau starts at about 2,000 feet above sea level, rising higher with the mountains. Summers are hot, but winters can get cold. On the Colorado Plateau is Monument Valley, Arizona. There, mesas and buttes rise dramatically over the earth. Mesas are steep mountains with flat tops. When wind and rain wear away the sides of the mesa, thin towers of rock called buttes are formed. Land shaped by water. The climate of the Southwest differ across the region. The Gulf Coast of Texas is hot and very humid. The mountain areas can be cold and snowy in the winter months, but most of the Southwest is hot and dry. Most of Arizona and New Mexico is especially dry. Water is a very scarce resource. There is very little rainfall in these states. When it does rain, it rains hard. The time when this region receives most of its rain is called the monsoon season. It starts in mid-June and lasts until the end of September. All the water rushes into dry riverbeds and stream beds. It also rushes through ditches called arroyos. Arroyos are formed by water over a long time. Each rainfall makes them deeper. The main source of fresh water for the region is the Colorado River and the Rio Grande. The Colorado River begins in Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. It flows through the states of Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and California and empties into the Gulf of California in Mexico. The Colorado River created the Grand Canyon. Over millions of years, the snow-fed river carved the canyon into the Earth's surface. Today, the Colorado River flows through a 280-mile stretch of the Grand Canyon. Mile-high walls of colored rock in the canyon tell a story of the Earth's geology. Each layer of colored mineral represents a time period. Some layers are volcanic rock from ancient eruptions. The Colorado River was very important to the early Native Americans. Many groups made their homes on or near the river. The river is still home to many Native American groups. The Rio Grande begins in Colorado. It passes through New Mexico and Texas and ends at the Gulf of Mexico. In Texas, the Rio Grande forms the border between the United States and Mexico. Long ago, ancestral Puebloan people built 18 pueblos, or towns, on the Rio Grande in what is now called New Mexico. Some still live there today. The Hohokam lived in central and southern Arizona between 200 BC and AD 1450. They lived mostly along the Salt and Gila rivers. The Hohokam farmed maize, corn. They gathered wild beans and fruit for food. They also hunted. The Hohokam are known for building an important irrigation canal. They dug a 3-mile trench into the ground to carry water from the Gila River to the fields. They developed a series of connected canals for irrigating their crops. Today, people make dams to provide fresh water. They build hydraulic plants on the rivers to make electricity. The rivers of the Southwest allow people to live in this dry region. Plants and animals of the Southwest. Desert ecosystems support plant and animal life. The Sonoran Desert has the greatest variety of plants of any desert in the world. About 560 different kinds of plants grow there. The saguaro cactus is the most recognized plant in the desert. This cactus has a central stalk and arms that grow out of its side. It can grow 40 feet tall, but cacti come in many shapes. The prickly pear looks like a flat paddle, and the golden barrel cactus looks like a round bulb. Desert cacti are typically covered with sharp spines. Coyotes and mountain lions roam the Sonoran Desert. They are always on the hunt for prey, jackrabbits, small deers, and squirrels. Over 260 types of birds can be found in this area during the year. Rattlesnakes, the desert tortoise, the giant Gila monster, and the tiger salamander also make their home in this dry ecosystem. Forests grow in the mountainous areas of the Colorado Plateau. Most forests are in northern New Mexico and Arizona. Here, ponderosa pine, spruce, and aspen thrive. These plants can live in the cold winters and cool summers in this ecosystem. Black bears, bobcats, coyotes, and cougars make their home here. The Texas coastal plain is home to many plant and animal species. Ducks, songbird, and geese migrate from Canada to spend their winters in the warmth. Tall grasses and wildflowers thrive inland because of the rainstorms that blow off in the Gulf of Mexico. Turtlegrass, cattails, and mangroves grow in the wetlands along the coast. Alligators, fiddler crabs, and sea turtles can also be found along the coast. Small cacti, such as the prickly pear, grow in this area, but not as many as in the desert. The Great Plains was once home to over 30 million bison, an animal early settlers called buffalo. The bison thrived on the prairie grasses of the Great Plains. Today, very few bison remain. They were hunted to near extinction by American buffalo hunters as the United States expanded west. Other animals, such as prairie dogs, ferrets, bobcats, red foxes, antelope, rattlesnakes, and hawks, still live there. Grasses as tall as 12 feet can be found in some parts of the Great Plains. Sagebrush bushes and buffalo grass are also common plants to the ecosystem. Today, people are working to protect the ecosystem of the Southwest. By protecting these habitats, the plants and animals here will flourish for many years to come. Early Native Americans, ancient Puebloans. Historians believe that the ancient Puebloan people are responsible for the cliff dwellings found throughout the region. These communities were complete towns with roads and irrigation systems. Eventually, the people left their cliffside homes and moved south, becoming known today as the Pueblo people, including the Hopi and other groups. Pueblo people. The Pueblo continued many of the traditions of their ancestors. They mixed the clay soil in the desert with straw and water to create a material called adobe. They used adobe bricks to build homes so that they could be many stories high. They irrigated their fields to grow different food. The Pueblo also continued to make baskets and pottery. They were excellent wood carvers. Shells, turquoise, and furs decorated their clothing. They painted beautiful art on their walls and their pottery. Today, the Puebloan people are still known for their art. Many live in their own sovereign pueblos or towns in New Mexico and Arizona. Hopi people. The Hopi are part of the Pueblo group. The word Hopi means peaceful one. In the past, they built their homes out of mud and stone, which kept their homes cool in the desert heat. They developed and grew 24 different kinds of corn and grew squash, beans, and pumpkins. The Hopi are still known for their pottery. The designs and shapes of each piece of the pottery tell a story. Many Hopi live in the Hopi Reservation in northeast Arizona. The Navajo. Historians believe that the first Navajo were part of a group called the Athascaban. Many Athascabans came from what is now Alaska and Canada. Some settled along the Pacific Ocean in Oregon and North California, while others moved into Arizona and New Mexico. For hundreds of years, early Navajo gathered food and hunted herds that moved. They lived in homes called hogans, often made of wood and clay. After the Navajo came into contact with the Pueblo, they learned farming techniques. The Navajo then settled in one place. Today, there are 10 states smaller in the area, Navajo Nation. The reservation is in Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. That was our read-along.